Amen.
It's not, that's Christianity, and that's leadership. It's that way. Proverbs 17:20, he that hath a froward heart. We talked about that word froward. It's kind of an old English word that's in our Bible. It just talks about people who have a stubborn heart, rebellious heart. He that hath a stubborn heart, a froward heart, findeth no good. But he that hath a perverse tongue falleth into mischief. I would think a good word or two words would sum up this person, and that would be a hard head. Lying and deceitful will lead you to nowhere but the evil. Please listen to my comments, because they come from all these years. Don't be a know-it-all. Oh yeah, I know, I know all about that, I know all about that. You don't know all about that. You don't have to know everything that there is to know. I feel sorry for people that you can't tell them anything. You ought to be able to listen to your best friends, at least, to tell you something. Well, at least to your mother and your dad, when they try to tell you something. But boy, they get started before they even leave the home. That they know more than mom and dad, more than anybody. That's a bad, bad thing. I don't think anybody in this class has that sort of an attitude. But you know people that do, that won't listen to anybody. They're stubborn. And stubbornness and lying, they go hand in hand. Because you lie to yourself. When you start telling how wonderful you are, you know very well, Mr. Haviland, you know very well that you're rotten to the core, don't you?
Yes.
And when you start blowharding, telling everybody how wonderful you are, you know it's a lie.
Right.
And it's a foolishness. It's foolishness.
Sir.
Nobody is going to believe you
Amen.
anyway. And you know what you really are, and you're heading in the wrong direction as a Christian leader to take that kind of an attitude. It's kind of like having a forward heart, a stubborn heart. Our life is to give up and give in and give over to God. And say, Lord, I can't run my life by myself. A broken and a contrite heart, God said he would not despise. So you humble yourselves. You don't exalt yourself. If you exalt yourself, God will have to humble you. I've never seen God's word fail, ever. I've never seen any of these hot shots. Oh, they may shoot hot and hard and high for a while, but it doesn't last long. I've seen them go into a city, and boy, they were going to set the whole world on fire. I know one fellow went into a city, and he maybe in 2 or 3 years ran 1,000 in Sunday school. But 2 or 3 years later, he was gone, left the church, went right to pot and nothing to it. You don't know how many people, since I've been in this town, have passed me by going this way, but I've had to meet them coming back. marching feet and the beat of the drum and the hoop-la and all that kind of stuff. Whatever you do, you have to keep on doing it. Now, I'm not being smart with you, but I'm telling you the truth. Paul, I could have 1,000 in Sunday school next Sunday. So, oh no, you couldn't. Oh, I said, I know I couldn't. So how would you do it? Well, I'd get Roy Rogers to come, and if Trigger was still alive, I'd have him bring his horse. And I'd advertise in the State Journal and on the radio and television, Roy Rogers is going to be in our church with his horse, and Dale Evans and all of them going to be here. They'll sing for us and bring a message and a testimony about Jesus Christ. He's a Christian man. I'd have it this week, but what am I going to do next week? I got to do something bigger and better the next time. Well, when I have George Bush come, then what am I going to do? Have Ben Layton come? And you just keep doing this, and it, I mean, I can see maybe giving the kids a cookie or a candy bar or something like that. Yeah. But on you start that stuff. Well, I'm going to give a bicycle away next Sunday. Yes, sir. You'd have 300 kids here to get a bicycle. What are you going to do the next week? Give away a Volkswagen? So I just think the best way is just door by door, knocking on doors, inviting folks to church, being faithful, keeping up your responsibilities, preaching the gospel, being faithful about that. I think that's the way to go. Now, that's my own idea. You take these Bible colleges, a lot of them all over this country have got so big that they're hurting themselves. When they were young and started out, they were really helpful. Now they got so many people coming in those places, they can't take care of them, have proper leadership and teachers to take them. God knows what you can do. My pastor, oh, how I referred to him hundreds of times. He said, Don, what you have to figure out is how many irons can you keep in the fire? You know, with branding irons, that's what they used to have, branding irons in the fire. And they'd put them in there, get it red hot and brand the cows. But you just had one branding iron. You have to heat up this one while you was using, you know, and then you heat up 4 or 5 or 6 of them so that you could just keep on branding cows with so many irons, branding irons in the fire. But how many branding irons can you do? I mean, could I take care of 6 or 10 branding irons? Am I at 1 iron? Maybe just one, that's all I can do is 1. Find out what you can do. And you do that, and that's all you have to do. God's not expecting you to do what George Smith does on the other side of town. Just do what you're supposed to. Be yourself. You understand what I'm saying? Amen. I just said I've seen the Bible to be right. You don't be headstrong. I don't think God would have us to be a milquetoast. But I don't think he wants us to be cocky, neither. Just wants us to be normal people, doing normal activities, not trying to take on more than we can handle and do more than we can do. Let me go on to say in verse 21, he that begetteth a fool doeth it to his own or to his sorrow, and the father of a fool hath no joy. You know, the father of some vulgar, rude, rough, unfeeling, uncivil, selfish, rash, brat, unmanageable, uncorrigible, obstinate. He said the father of such a child is sorrow. There's no joy. He's ashamed of his child. just tell me, who loves a brat? No, nobody does. Who likes a smart aleck? Nobody likes a smart aleck. And it's your life in raising children, but you yourself need to understand that if you are a brat, it'd be good if you could recognize it. Don't take the joy out of your wife or your husband or your mother, your dad, your children, because you are so obstinate and such a hard-boiled screwball nincompoop that you're so hard to get along with that it just takes the joy out of the house because they have to handle you with kid gloves or you're going to get mad. Something's wrong. Something. I know people that have to live that way. I buried a sweet lady, one of the nicest ladies that ever graced Parker Memorial Baptist Church. Everybody at the church loved her. She lived up on the other end of town. She was gracious, kind, loving person. But she had a son that was in jail most of the time. In fact, when she died of cancer, he was in prison. They allowed him to come to his mother's funeral. 2 police officers brought him in shackles to his mother's funeral. He told me, he said, no doubt, my mother died of a broken heart. And I am responsible for my mother's death. Don't let your parents down. They brought you up. Don't let them down. Don't break your folks' heart or anybody's heart because you're so stubborn. He that begetteth a fool doeth it to his sorrow, and the father of a fool hath no joy. I'm going to go to the next verse. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. A merry heart, a happy heart is healthful. A broken heart or a broken spirit will develop bodily illness. Nothing ruins health more like than grief. When my first wife died, her name was Winifred. Winifred Knowlton was her name when I married her. They lived in Petoskey. Her dad was a Michigan Bell Telephone Company worker. Good job. Well-paid job. Had money. They had other children. My mother-in-law's first husband had died, and she'd had a child by her first husband. And my father-in-law never really cared a thing about her child. My wife had a brother, twin brother, that died just a few days after it was born. My first wife weighed 2.5 pounds when she was born. She had a younger brother, too. But my father-in-law's joy was in Winifred, my wife. The sun rose and set in that girl. She got sick with cancer when she was 43 and died at 45 years of age. Her father literally grieved himself to death over that girl's death. He couldn't handle it. Sorrow brings people down. It's hard to handle this sort of thing. Grief and sorrow and anxiety and fretfulness and bitternesses and hatreds. You have to rid yourself of those things that will kill you.
Amen.
Bitterness will take all of the joy out of your life. You get mad at God for things. Let me give you my thoughts of how to live a good life. Number one is to keep sweet. And you have to work at that. Keep your smile. Don't let the song go out of your heart. A merry heart is better than medicine, our verse says. Overcome being a grouch and cantankerous and mean and ugly, and I realize that life isn't fun and games, but you can still have a lot of fun. You can laugh, and it'd be good if you could learn to laugh at yourself for the dumb, stupid things that you do. I'm talking to Christian workers. Create a sense of humor. Learn, if you want to learn to preach, one of the best ways to learn to preach is to learn how to tell a joke. Now, when preaching is no joke, I'm not meaning that. But I'm telling a story. When I tell this story, you have to build your message of your joke. You have to kind of build it up a little bit like this. Then you have a punchline that's funny. You can't just, say the cows ate the cabbage. That's not funny. But if you tell the story, let me just tell you a funny little story. Let me think of that story. There was this, seeing that our little camera lady here is Italian, there was this Italian fellow. He lived in Italy. He lived in a castle. Even had a moat all around the castle. But this Italian fellow was a vampire. He loved to catch those Italians, we call them wops. You know, the wops means without papers. That is, when they came to this country, they came without papers, but they came anyway. But anyway, so he'd catch these wops, and he would suck the blood out of them, then take their bloodless carcasses, and drop them over the wall down into the moat. And he kept doing it for a long time. But one day, he was kind of spooked out because he heard somebody singing. He thought it was in the courtyard. But when he investigated, it was down in the moat. It was an alligator that lived in the moat. And he was singing, "Drained wops keep falling on my head." Drained wops. See, now that's a funny little story. But you see what I did? I built it around and kind of so that your mind was all ready for it. Then I dropped the punchline, and it was funny. That's the way you preach. You don't preach to tell funny stories, but you lay out your front porch, you tell the backgrounds of the message, and then you begin to bring in this thought, and this thought, and this thought, and you climax. My pastor said, Don, it's not so much in your preaching how you start or how you work in the message. It's your climax that means the most. Then you can make your appeal and draw the net. You understand what I'm saying? And that's sunlight, but a little humor. I would imagine crammed into my cranium several hundred funny little stories. Some people can tell them and other people can't. You say, I can't tell. I can't even remember them. But you could remember them if you wanted to. I reminded of a fellow that went to prison. And the first day that he was in prison, he went to mess hall to eat. There was just hundreds of fellas in there eating. And somebody yelled, 72! And everybody bust right out laughing. And the fellow said, what's so funny about 72? Oh, the fellow said, we have so many jokes that run down through this prison, all these fellas tell. He said, we got so many of them, we've got them numbered. You wouldn't even have to tell them. All you have to do is yell the number. They know the joke and they laugh. So the next day he thought, well, I'll get in good with these fellas. And so when he sat down, he said, 72! And nobody laughed whatsoever. And he said, how come they laughed yesterday? They didn't laugh today. And the guy said, well, some people can tell them, some people can't. See, that's a funny little story. It's a funny little story. And it doesn't hurt a thing. I didn't hurt a bit. I didn't incriminate anything or anybody. But it kind of broke the ice. And it kind of made people a little bit responsive towards you. And you wasn't coming on full blast like gangbusters when you got in the pulpit. Now, it's your life. Do as you please. But I considered this early in my ministry, that if a fella could tell a joke, a funny little story, a little humor, that he could preach. Usually, he could preach. And if you say, well, I can't tell him, you probably can't preach either. You can't put it together in a manner that's going to be presented to the people. You understand what I'm saying? There's kind of a little background behind it all. And usually after you get preaching for years, and you have an analytical sort of thing literated, like if you really want to live for God, first of all, you need to admit that you're wrong. Then secondly, you need to make amends, get things right, and then you need to down the line, so you got them all lined all up there. People remember what you said. But also, if you use the same P's, D's, or Q's, or whatever, as you preach these sermons I preached last night, I used the F's. So what good is all of that foolishness? Well, it not only does it help people to remember, but it also helps you to remember and keeps your mind zeroed in on what you're doing. But after a while, you keep doing this year after year, you'll get so you can write poetry because this rhymes with this. I mean, God looked down, saw our condition, He came down, then He laid down His life, then He rode to heaven and sat down, and then one day He's coming down. So I got 5 points with all bing, 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 all coming down. But it would be easier to write a poem about how God looked down, and in all of His wonderful grace, He came down. You see what I mean? The lines rhyme together. Your whole mind will become analytical and literate. After a while, you have all of this stuff rolling around in your head. Maybe I'm not making any sense, but I'm truly trying. But a merry heart doeth good. I visit in the homes. I was visiting yesterday Gary Bailey. He's had knee surgery. And Mary was there, and so I probably told 2 or 3 funny little stories. When I went in, he was frowning and hurting. When I went, he was laughing and having a big time. It's better than any kind of medicine, you understand? Better than going in there and joining and say, well, I'm so sorry, you're feeling so bad, and it must hurt awful, hurt me awful. Yeah, well, see, it's nothing to be funny about. But on the other hand, a little humor at the right place at the right time. There are times when you need to forget about it. I knew a preacher years ago, he's dead now, but he'd get sermon, have a good sermon, and then get right down to where he's going to draw the net and give an invitation and tell a funny story. It was a wrong time to do it. It ruined it all. But anyway, let's go to the next line. In verse 23, a wicked man taketh a gift out of the bosom to pervert the ways of judgment. You see how Solomon, the Bible said he wrote 3,000 Proverbs. Each one of these verses are a text. But let me change the whole subject we're talking about. We're talking now about bribes. He said, a wicked man taketh a gift out of his bosom. You know, years gone by, men wore pants, but they also wore a gown around those. They wore breeches and they wore these other things, but they'd have a sash, otherwise like a girdle they called it, and they'd tie it around to kind of keep the clothes together. And so that made a wonderful place to keep money down in there. It couldn't get by your belt. And so, and it would be hard for somebody to pick your pocket, you know, because they'd have to go down in your shirt to get to that. My wife, when we go on to Israel or someplace, she puts money down in her bosom. She'll hide it down in there. Nobody's going to get down in there. Yeah. My grandmother, all of my grandmothers, they used to hide it down in there too. You see them get that dollar bill or $10 out of that bill. But in olden days, in Bible days, that's where they kept their money, was down here in their bosom. But they said, a wicked man taketh a gift out of the bosom to pervert the ways of judgment. We're talking about wicked people who give bribes, rewards to people who don't tell the truth, pay a judge to make a decision in your favor, to pay a witness to lie for you, to promise to give something to somebody if they cheat in your favor. And so you'd pay for a false testimony or perform for you some illegal or unjust thing by money. You know, money does things to people. A bribe is a price, it's a reward, it's a gift, it's a favor. If you'll help me slick this guy, I'll give you half of what we slick him out of. You're causing somebody to do an act that's contrary to what is the truth and what is right to do. It's like seducing a lady. I'll give you $25 if you will have a relationship with me. That's wicked as hell. Your mind is corrupt. And you buy off people. You fix situations. You tamper with truth. And you're as crooked as a dog's hind leg. But be not deceived, God is not mocked. Yes, sir. It's so wicked to defraud. A bribe will blind the eyes of a person. It's an awful sin. And what people don't realize is that the all-seeing eye of God sees this. And whatever you sow, that is exactly what you're going to reap. And whenever you cheat your way down through life, be sure of this, that calamity will surely come to your life. God will see to it. He will, especially you people who are in the ministry. Would you listen to this old man? I'm an old man. I can con people. I could con them. So what do you mean? Well, you know that fishing pole that you've got, Mark, that you can cast out there 50 yards? I've never been able to have one like that. Yeah. I've always wanted one, but I never had the money to buy it. And so you're a good Christian, you say, oh, Brother Green, why don't you just take mine? I don't use it that much, and you can have it. I conned him. I fished him. And after you're with the Lord's people, they are susceptible and gullible for a lot of things. And you have to be careful. I have to be careful. Because I could con. I could fish whatever I wanted to fish. That's wicked. It's wicked to do that. But I know people in the Lord's work constantly do that. I know one preacher, good friend of mine. I bet you, Donna, I bet you that he has had 15 cars given to him. He knows how to do it. Boy, my car isn't running good. I've been having a lot of trouble with the radiator. And, oh, preacher, we love you. why don't you just take the keys mine and have my car? Motorhomes, trailers. This guy has conned so many people out of so many. It's unbelievable. Really. You have to be careful about that stuff. People love you. They respect you. And if you're not careful, you can con them. You understand what I'm saying? Just think about these divine healers. These guys on the radio, the television, that claim that they heal these people and all this stuff. People all over this country. Just like Jimmy Baker. He built this big hotel where people were going to go to and spend their vacations. And he had more people taking vacations than he had rooms to take care of them. And they got down there and there was no room for them, and they'd given money to do it. No, just big. But he had sick so many people. And his doghouse had air conditioning in it for his dog. You know, I'm telling you, these guys are shysters is what they are. And that's not Christianity. I'm telling you, just trying to tell you that don't be a crook, and don't be a cheat, and don't be a gyp, don't be a creep, don't be a con. Bribes are wicked. There is really no bribing with God. I've said it before, but it's time to say it again. My pastor again told me, he said, Don, you can stay in the ministry a long time and have a good life and a good ministry if you don't try to pull the wool over the eyes of your people. Now, if you do, he said, God will see that you're doing that. And he will allow the rug to be pulled out from underneath you, and you lose your shirt and everything you've done. Because God is not mocked. You're not going to do that to his people, and he's not going to let you do it either. So you have to be perfectly honest and above board. That's about as good a lesson as you'll ever hear if you ever allow yourself to get involved in the Lord's work. You have to be upright and straight and pure and holy in your heart and your life. You know, it's time to quit, and I just really got started. I didn't do a lot tonight. I did one. Begin with tonight of the 17th chapter of Proverbs. It's kind of my plan tonight. There's only 5 verses left, but I'm going to, when I get through with the last verse, I'm going to quit. No matter what time it is, I'm going to quit. I don't know if I can get all 5 of them done. I sometimes only get 2 or 3, but I'll try to finish this chapter so that when we come back in the fall, we can start with the 18th chapter. Wisdom is before him that hath understanding, but the eyes of a fool are in the ends of the earth. Otherwise, he's saying that wisdom is in reach of everybody that looks for it. But fools never see it because they are aiming at things that are impossible for them in their lives. Things that are out of reach. One of the nicest things about a human being's life, if he could just know his potential, if he could just know what he can do and what he can't do. But wisdom is before them that have understanding, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the world. You want to get this straight in your head. I have a lot of respect for Abraham Lincoln, but he wasn't exactly right when he said all men are created equal, because all men are not created equal. I think I know what he meant, and in that sense, that's true. But everybody doesn't have as many brains as other people do. They may have brains the same quality, but not the quality. Some people are not as bright as other people are. Some people are born with higher IQs than other people. And for you to think that you have the same and above the same abilities of somebody else, you don't have it. You may have abilities along one line, and they may have it along another line, but to say that you're as smart as anybody else, that isn't true. different talents and different abilities. Uh, some people have better opportunities to be able to do certain things. Some people have more money than other people. And you say, well, that doesn't have anything to do. Oh, it does. If you have money, you can. It was old Bob Jones, I believe, that said it. He said if you're running a school or a church, if you don't have brains, you can buy brains. You can hire people who have, let us say, mathematical genius, and they can teach in your school. You couldn't teach it, but somebody else could teach it. And that goes for just about anything. If you don't have the brains, you buy the brains. I was getting Brother Napper the other day. I was telling him about that, and I said, that's the reason I hired you, is for your brain. He laughed, of course. But some families have leadership abilities. It's just sort of inbred in them. Now, I'm not necessarily pushing politics tonight, but here is President Bush Sr. He was President of the United States. Now here's George W. Bush, his son, who's President of the United States. He has another son, Jeff, I believe his name, that is the governor of Florida. And who knows, he may be the next president. I don't know. But what are you saying, Brother Green? I'm saying there are families in the genes of those people is abilities to do things. Some run businesses, and sometimes families run businesses for 100 years. Now you take this Fabriano's candy store. I think it's about the third or fourth generation of that family that are running that store. And they probably, all of them made a fortune selling candy at $20 a pound. You know what I'm saying? In the Bible, it was Judah, the tribe of Judah. Well, King Saul came out of Benjamin, but the majority of those kings of Judah were all of that same lineage. They were king quality. Well, you say that, and oh, well, no, just let me say. There were 12 tribes, but only 2 tribes. Judah and Benjamin were the only ones kings came out of. So that's a dynasty, and well, it could have something to do with it, but abilities to do that kind of thing. It seemed like when God put Levi, that he made him the priestly order, and all of the spiritual leaders of Israel were of the tribe of Levi. Now don't get mad at God because you belong to the tribe of Asher. You said that isn't fair. Well, who are you to say who's fair and what's fair? Really, I know where my little niche is. I know just about what I can do and what I can't do. I think I told you maybe last week or week before about my pastor said to me, he said, Don, you have to figure out how many irons you can keep in the fire. You may be able to pastor, maybe be administrator of a school, and maybe be a trustee on a board of a Bible college and 2 or 3 other things, but you may be just able to do one thing. and do it well. So you find out how many irons you can keep in the fire. That's an old phrase, you know. They used to brand cows, I guess they still do, and they'd have branding irons, and one man could take care of one or two of them maybe, and keep it hot, keep it branded, but some could probably take 4 or 5 brands now and do it. But I kind of, years ago, Jack Hiles is the same age as I am. And people used to say, why don't you go near Jack Hiles? Well, I said, I'm waiting for him to come hear me preach. That was a kind of a slur in a way. To build the tabernacle, they called for a man by the name of Bezalel, because he was an artificer in brass and iron. He knew how to take brass and iron, how he could mold it, and how he could make all sorts of things like candelabras or whatever else was needed in the work of the ministry. He had ability to do that. Now here's Bob Kingman. He doesn't pretend to try to be a preacher. He loves God. He's in the ministry in that respect. But what he is a mechanic. He is a genius. I mean, a genius. You look at him, you wouldn't think that's the way he is, but you put tools in his hands. He's now making a press that will run the paper, print the paper, fold the paper, and collate the paper, and put it into a book. He's almost got it perfected. You say, he couldn't do that. Oh, but you see, some people have that capability. He's got my lawnmower up in the bus garage fixing it. And he showed it to me. There was a broken, well, the piston rod was broken and tore up in there. And he told me what I'd have to have was $150 worth of parts, and I just gave him $100. I said, get what you need. And it's all laying up there, and he said, I got it all apart. And my wife said, you think you'd be able to put it all back together again? But I would suppose it'd be just about as much trouble for him to put it back together as it was for him to take it apart. He understands that kind of stuff. Now here's this brother. He understands. What do you understand? But it is some sort of a business of communications. And he understands that. And if you understand it too, it's no problem. To me, I would get tangled up and I wouldn't even care to bother with it. Some people are bookkeepers. That is, they can take care of counting. To me, I say, forget it. I do most of my financing out of my front shirt pocket. This is where I keep my money, and this is where, if you people want to know how to steal from me, it's right here where I keep it. And usually my suspender fits right over, kind of protects it from falling out. And I pay my bills. I don't have a checking account. I don't have one. I pay my bills with cash. Oh, you say, how could you do that? Well, at the bank where I bank, they have free checking. So I go in there, and I need this much for this monthly payment and this for this, and they give me checks free of charge. And then I send them to the people that I work to. See, that's a dumb way to do it. Well, you know, I've been doing it this way for 20-some years, and I'm getting by just fine, and I don't have any bills to pay. They're all paid. I take care of my finances myself, in my own head, with my own pocket, and with my own cash. So I wouldn't do that. Why don't you keep books? I don't care to keep books. I take care of my income tax and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sloppy about it, but I know what I'm doing. But I do it all up here and in here. It's a part of the, and some people are bookkeepers. Some people are talkers. I mean, they just windjam from morning to night. That's all they do is talk, 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 talk. Well, some people are doctors and lawyers and college professors, but you try to be something that you're not, and you're going to have an awful hard time down through life. It can ruin your life, really. Wisdom is before him that have understanding. Otherwise, you have wisdom to do, because you have the understanding of this certain thing, you know how to go about to do it. You walk in the light that God gives you, in the abilities and in the talents that you have, and God will give you more light and other ways of developing these things that you have knowledge about and wisdom about. You can even do a better job with experience, knowing how to make a little shortcuts in one thing or another to accomplish what you want to accomplish. What I'm trying to say is that I think I said it recently in this class, that it would be so good if some of you might go and take an aptitude test and find out just what your strongest traits are, what your strengths and your weaknesses. You may not know them, and without some sort of a test, you would never be able to find out what is your. You could work on your weaknesses and maybe bring them up, but you also may be able to dominate on those strengths and be able to do better. It's up to you. It's your life. I've never, that I know of, I've never taken an aptitude test, but I think you could take one at one of the colleges. Maybe Brother Campbell could arrange it through the ACE school. I don't know. But anyway, it would be worthwhile for some of you to do that. Find out what your little niche is. Of course, it doesn't always tell the truth. I mean, an aptitude test. I think sometime back I told you about a fella who went through Bible college. I think he went through Springfield. When I say that's Baptist Bible Fellowship, in Springfield they have a school. And when he was in school, he had a cleft palate. Now, a cleft palate is when you are born with a hair lip. And when he talked, he always talked to his nose. And he said that God had called him to preach. And everybody sort of made light of him because they knew that he'd have a hard time holding an audience with that kind of an impediment. But he said God called him. And he went down to one of the Carolinas and started a church. And some plastic surgeon took an interest in him and built a roof in his mouth so he could talk normal. And the last that I heard of him, he was running 1,000 in Sunday school. I mean, sometimes, you know, you have abilities that nobody else knows anything about. And maybe some impediment that has hindered you can be taken care of through a position or something. But I'm saying be all that you can be. And determine to be all that you can be for the glory of God. But I would say, as our text says, wisdom is before him that hath understanding, but the eyes of a fool are in the ends of the earth. Would you listen to me and not think that I am not spiritual when I would say that you hear these super spiritual people talk, and it always bothers me. Well, with God, you can do anything. And that isn't true. Well, if God's in it, you can do it. That's true. But there are some things that God never intended you to get into, or He'd have given you the ability to do it, to start with. But because so-and-so does it, they think they could do it. I'm not being smart with anybody, but I know probably a half a dozen or more preachers that have tried all of their life to preach. They've drugged their families through Bible college and all the hardships of financing their way through college, and they can't preach. To find out what you're supposed to do and have ability to do it, and do it, and then be willing to take that as a calling from God, rather than trying to be something that you can't be and waste your life upon trying to do something. I mean, I'm not trying to put down anything or anybody, but you perhaps think the world of Brother Green. And you'd say, oh, Brother Green, I wish you was the President of the United States. See, I know I couldn't do that. I know I couldn't, and I'd be a fool. Oh, but Brother Green, you can. If God's in it, no. If God was in it, He'd have given me the ability a long time ago to do that. I couldn't do that. You say, well, you got all these staff and all these helpers, and yeah, I know all of that, but I couldn't do it. I know I can't do it. You know what I can do? Somewhat is pastor of the Parker Memorial Baptist Church. That's my little niche for almost 50 years. I know. Somebody said, don't you think you could have pastored the First Baptist Church of New York City? You see, I'm not interested in New York City. I'm interested in Lansing, Michigan. I'm perfectly content. Here in this town, I'm a Michigan boy, born in Michigan, raised mostly in Michigan. And I'd be tickled to death to stay in Michigan. I've been around the world. I mean, all the way around. But I've been halfway around 4 or 5 times. I've crossed the Atlantic 20-some times. And I've crossed the Pacific 15 times. I don't know how many times. I've seen all the places that I would want to see. I've never found any place that I wanted to be any more than I wanted to be right here where I am. I'm about the happiest man in the world sitting in this class, teaching this class. It's my niche. I'm not going to try to be something else. It may be more than I'm capable of doing, I don't know. But I'm having a good time doing it. I almost messed up my life. I told about it Wednesday night at church. I fell in love with a girl when I was in high school. Oh, you say it was just puppy love. It wasn't puppy love. I loved that girl. She's a pretty, beautiful, little German redhead. Smart. She's valedictorian in the class. Talented, played the piano. I said she'd be just exactly what I need in the ministry. I loved her and wanted her. Craved her. She, after I graduated from high school, she had 1 more year to go. And while I was gone away, the cat played. And she played at the piano in the dance hall. And I came back, found out about it. I said, I'm sorry, I couldn't marry you. I'm destined for the ministry. That's all I want. I could have left school and kept her. I could have maybe said, okay, if you don't want to be a preacher's wife, that's what she said. Well, then I'll change my mind and I'll marry you. But see, I I couldn't do that.
Amen.
I found my niche, I do, since I was a little boy, probably about 11 years old, that I was supposed to pastor. And when I was 16, I surrendered to preach. I knew what I was doing. And I've enjoyed my life. And that's what I say, find out what you can do. Maybe you're to work in a Christian school. Maybe you're to be a missionary. Maybe you're to be a pastor. Maybe an evangelist. And maybe a bus worker. And maybe a Christian layman helping in the work of the Lord. If you can find yourself, do what you're supposed to do. Don't try to be something that you can't do. That's good preaching, isn't it? You know, it's Solomon's smart. He's the wisest man that ever lived. But be all that you can be. Now we go to the next verse. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her that bear him. A fool has no sense of responsibility. And it becomes a shame to the parents. I saw a bumper sticker the other day. I thought it was pretty good. It said, if you can't feed them, don't breed them. If you're not going to take care of your child, don't breed the child. But you know, people out here running rampant, giving marriage and giving in marriage and whoring around, and that isn't, any lame fool can do that kind of stuff. Yeah. I would say to parents, they ought not to have children. If they can't raise them, then they ought not to have them. That's what I would think so. If you don't know what you're doing, I wouldn't bother to do it. You say, well, that's good, Brother Green, you can say that, but I say, wisdom is before him that hath understanding. And it's kind of like, if you're a parent, you must take that responsibility of training those children. Now I can understand an unsaved person not knowing what they're really doing and not yielded to God and get saved later on in life. We have several families in our church that got saved late in life. They've pretty well raised their family or partly raised their family. And it was, in some cases, almost too late because the children, their minds weren't as set. Some of the younger children come right on and became wonderful Christians. There was a family there last night. The Todds got saved late in life. And most of their children, well, 4 out of the 6 attend church, but 2 of them don't. They got saved late in life. But what I wanted to say was that a foolish son not only brings grief to his father, but bitterness to that mother. Who do you think is responsible? I have one young man here tonight. Lee's not here, and the young boys come sometimes. I can talk to them. But let me just say this to you, that as I would talk to these kids in the school every day or every other day, who do you think is responsible for you? Are you not responsible for yourself? This young man, are you responsible for yourself? You can't say, oh no, I'm not responsible. My mother, my dad are responsible. They are. They are until you reach maybe Old Testament wise, 20 years of age, you're still living at the house. They're somewhat responsible. But you are responsible to get your education, to get your training, to get yourself ready for your life. My dad and my mother were both hardworking people. My dad especially was a plastering contractor before he went into ministry. Hardworking man, get up 4 o'clock in the morning, eat breakfast 5:30, 6 o'clock, and on his way to work. Day after day after day, year in and year out. Responsible people. They took care of their family. And if they got out of line, they were brought back into line. And I don't know how Mom and Dad did it. I have no idea how they did it. But they bent our minds towards God. My sister married a preacher. And my 2 brothers, both deacons in the Baptist church. I'm the only preacher. But I say that somehow or other they molded our life by precept and example. But Dad always, and my mother always taught me that I am responsible for my life, for my future. They're dead and gone. Almost 20-some years. They can't be responsible for me. But what they did do, they put into me responsibility that I've got to learn how to work. I've got to make my own living. I've got to pay my own bills, that they're not going to be around to do that. I've got to do that. That's character. And that has to be instilled in the lives of children. Somebody has to do that. Who's going to see to it that your children eat? They have clothes, they have shelter. How long are you going to do this? You can't do it forever. So you have to train them. That's what he's talking about. A foolish son who has no responsibility, who never got an education, never got any training, and couldn't hold down a job, too lazy to get up in the morning and go to work. I feel sorry. I feel sorry. I come up in a different culture. I've outlived my culture. When I was 76 years old, about 3 or 4 more weeks. The whole lifestyle of America was so much different. There wasn't hardly a man. There hardly wasn't a young man who wasn't married, that didn't work. Everybody worked. They packed their lunch, they put it in a bucket or a paper sack, and took it to work every day. There wasn't any labor unions, thank God. People earned their own living. There was no big-time welfare. No, it wasn't. It said it'd be terrible if the government didn't take care of me. No, it'd be wonderful if the government didn't take care of you. Is your government responsible for you? No, you're responsible for yourself. Every tub sits on its own bottom, and everybody makes his own way in this world. That's the philosophy that I grew up in. I'm so glad that I did. If you can't afford a wife, don't get married. And if you get married, you take care of that wife. And if you have children, you have responsibility to take care of those children. Or don't bother to have children. A fool is a grief to his father and to his mother. And you'll see that slop heels sooner or later going into drugs, going into drink, and becoming a derelict, a bum, a beggar, and a burden on the family, always wanting money, wanting to buy them things. If you want a pair of pants, Don, go and buy them. Well, you don't have a job. Well, you get a job, you go buy your pants. Yeah. You make money. If it wasn't more than shoveling sidewalks. When I was a kid, we had a big industry where I lived in a little town, Elsie over here. They had a big grist mill where they ground corn, flour and stuff. And there was always corn cobs coming out the end of that factory, piles as big as this church sometimes. What we kids would do, we'd take burlap bags and fill them up with corn cobs and put them on a wagon and go door to door and sell the corn cobs. So what were they going to do with these corn cobs? They start their fire in the morning with them. They put them in there, pour a little kerosene on them, and they get a good roaring fire with those dry corn cobs. Then they put their wood on top of it. That's how people used to. They didn't have electric stoves, gas stoves. They had cook stoves, wood stoves. You'd start your fire in the living room, cook in the stove, maybe pot-belly stove, throw a few corn cobs. And they'd buy them 10 cents a bag. If they didn't sell too good at 10 cents, sell them for 5. He just did it. So I wouldn't do it. Well, yeah, I'm glad I did. I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but everybody is responsible for themselves and for their family. And I think the character building lesson here is don't be a bum. And don't be a burden on your mother and dad. Don't be to them, that they would be ashamed. I'm not saying I'm anything or anybody. I know I'm not. But my dad was a preacher the last 30 years of his life. And everywhere he would go, he would say, my boy Donald is the best preacher in the state of Michigan. That's what he tell everybody. And you've heard me preach, and I'd say, now my son Tim can out-preach me 10 times better than I am. Proud, see? Proud of my boys, all of them. My daughter, missionary. I don't have to hesitate to say, boy, I'm a little bit, I have to kind of keep old Don down a little bit, because my children are serving God.
Amen.
And I got 5 grandchildren already in full-time Christian service, and 5 more preparing for full-time Christian service. That's 10 of them. And there'll probably be some more grandchildren, great-grandchildren. You say, well, Brother Green, you're bragging. I'm not. Yeah, I'm just trying to say, I'm glad I was born in the culture that I was born, that everybody was responsible. All of my boys had paper routes when they were kids. So that's dumb. Well, call it dumb if you want it. But they had money to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah. Amen.
They didn't have to depend on Dad either. But I got to go on. Chapter 17, verse 26. Also to punish the just is not good, nor to strike a prince for equity. We're talking now about fairness, injustice, anarchy. Neither of them are. Injustice and anarchy, of course, are never good. It's never, it's never right to punish good people or to strike somebody because they didn't do right. What I'm trying to say is, it's wrong for women to have abortions. Would you agree?
No.
But it'd be wrong for me to kill the doctor that gave the abortion.
Right.
You see that sometimes they bomb these abortion clinics? That's not right. You don't strike prince for equity. The policeman stopped you, so you haul off and stop the policeman. You'd probably get put in jail. The judge sentenced a man, an innocent man, but you don't go then and beat up the judge for making that sort of a judgment. No, that's not Christian. So the boss fires a good man, but the good man doesn't strike strike the boss because he fired him. That's not Christian. There's character here in this verse. Here's our young friend here playing basketball on the team. And so the referee makes a bad call, a wrong call. But it's wrong for you to yell at the referee.
Yeah. Amen.
That's not Christian. So when you made all, we're Christians. Two wrongs never made a right.
Amen.
It's wrong, perhaps, that somebody struck you, but it'd be wrong for you to strike them back. Now, I know that God never intended for us to be milquetoast. I don't think He did that. But you're a Christian. It's wrong for somebody to cuss you out, but it'd be much more wrong for you to cuss them back. Can you understand that?
Amen.
It's unkind. People are unkind to you, but you don't be unkind to them. You were treated unfairly, but it's wrong for you to retaliate and treat them the same way. You take your wrong graciously. When Jesus was hanging on the cross, did he curse and swear and yell? Did he bite and kick and squirm when they were nailing him to the cross? He willfully laid down his life. And then when they hung him between heaven and earth, he's there in agony. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Now that's the height of Christianity. It's Christ himself. But it said when he was reviled, he reviled not again. When you go 1 mile and he compels you to go another mile, you go the second mile. When you slap you on one cheek, you turn the other cheek. So the character building lesson here is to have grace, to do right, even to those that do you wrong, you do right. And the very thought that you're bigger than that other person. But I mean not physically, but mentally and spiritually, you're big. The word is magnanimous. You're not small. You're not argumentative. You're not complaining because you weren't treated just right. You believe that God will vindicate. Daniel was put in the den of lions. And you know what happened? Those that had accused him and caused him to be there, their families, their wife and their children were all thrown into the den. God will take care of vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. It's your life. Do as you please to do. I keep telling you that, but you're in this class, and I'm telling you the character building things that will make you a better person. Really a servant of the Lord, a person involved in the Lord's work is never to double up their fists. That's not Christianity. A servant is not to strive. I'm going to go to the 27th verse. He that hath knowledge spareth his words. That is, if you got good sense, you're not going to be a talker. A man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. And he's talking about a person who really knows what they're talking about, isn't a smart aleck. He's not an empty talker, foolish talker. You know, people who have wall-to-wall mouths show their ignorance. I don't know, but some people are always trying to make an impression, so they talk, when they're really making a fool out of themselves. I'm around people all the time. There are people that I love them, and they're my friends. But you can't talk about one subject, but what they are bigger and better and tougher and stronger and know more about it than you ever know about it. And they'll butt in while you're trying to tell them something. They'll butt in, oh yeah, I know all about that. I did this and I was there, blah, 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 blah. Who cares about what you did? I want to tell you what I did. But you gotta have some seeds upstairs to be able to think right about stuff like that. When you think your experiences are greater than anybody else's experiences, and that you have all the answers and you have to answer everybody. You don't have to be better than anybody else. You don't have to be smarter, have more ability. You don't have to be first with the most. You don't have to tell everybody what you know. I remember a little story I heard about a man that went to the dentist and took his wife with him. She's one of those women that did all the talking. And so she went right on into the dentist chair with her husband, and the dentist said, "What tooth is giving you trouble?" And she piped up and said, it's the bottom in the far left corner of his mouth, the last on the left. He said, "How long has this been giving you trouble?" And she piped up and said, 3 weeks. And he said, "Do you have insurance?" And she said, "Yes." And he buzzed his little buzzer for the receptionist to come in. And she came in and said, "Doctor, what can I do for you?" Well, he said, "I want you to help me to extract this tooth from this man." She said, "But you never asked me to do that before. I don't know how to do that." Why do you need me?" "Well, this woman will not let this man open his mouth." Have you ever been around a woman like that? Or a man like that? They got all the answers and they know all there is to know. And yeah, I just say it's too bad. Some people have no understanding that they'd be so much better if they just shut up. Motor mouths. I don't know how to be kind about it, but sometimes I feel like saying, "In Christian love, would you shut up?" In Christian love, but I know of a fellow that died, and the wife had an epitaph on the tombstone, R.I.P. stand rest in peace until we meet again. Yeah, she's just a plain nagging woman. But anyway, could I emphasize one more thing that was in that little book that I recommended on how to win friends and influence people? Nobody wants to hear your problems. Nobody wants to hear your problems. Oh yeah, nobody wants to. Maybe your mother, but nobody does. And you want to make people sick and tired, and when they see you coming, they want to go the other way, because you've always got problems and troubles and sicknesses and chronic situations and catastrophes, and that's because you're an idiot. You are an idiot. Nobody wants to know anything about them, and yet you think they do. A man of knowledge spareth his words, is what our text says. One fellow said, you must have brushed your teeth this morning with gunpowder because you've been shooting your mouth off all day long. And that's just about the way it is. Just be smart enough to know that other people don't want to hear you always give your opinion. I know all there is to know about everything. I'm going to take this last one and see if I can. Verse 28, 17th chapter. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise. But he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. Even a fool, a man doesn't have much sense, if he keeps his mouth shut, people might think he's a pretty smart fellow. So, when you're too bold with your tongue, you know the Bible said, words fitly spoken, right at the right time. Words fitly spoken are like apples of gold in pitchers of silver. Know when to talk and when not to talk. This is a character building lesson about motor mouth people, about wall-to-wall mouth people, about jibber-jabber people, about wind-jamming people, people who absolutely grow tired. People grow tired of having them around because all they do is talk. Now, I may be talking to somebody tonight in this class that has that problem. I don't know. And I'm not accusing anybody. But verse 27 says, he that's got good sense keeps his mouth shut. And in verse 28, you're considered smart when you hold back your tongue. Know what to say and know when to say it. Paul said in his writings, study to be quiet and do your own business. My mother was a good woman. She put this in my head, and I can still hear her saying it. Donald, keep your nose out of other people's business. It's none of your business what they do. Boy, what good advice. Keep your nose out of other people's business. You know any busybodies that like to know all the facts and all the truth about everything going on? Well, I trust that maybe some of you have you ever felt bad, Brother Paul, when you said something that you wished that you would have never said?
Yes.
Sure. It's like putting your foot in your mouth. Why did I ever say that? Sometimes you say it and people misunderstand what you said. A funny little story, kind of crude story, kind of I don't know how to word it, but this fellow was on board ship. He was in the Navy, and his job was to receive communications from mainland to give to the men on board. So he got on the PA and said, now hear this. He said, Jones, your mother died today. Well, the captain of the ship said, man, fella, that's an awful blow to any man to get that his mother died. That was no way blasting it out over the PA system. Hurt that man bad. He said, you're going to have to do better than that. or else I'm gonna have to get somebody else to do the communicating. So the next day, Jones's dad died. And he lined up all these men on the ship, lined them right up and said, all you that have a living dad, would you step forward? Jones, not you. That's about the way some people are. Not about that much sense, you know. God made us with 2 eyes and 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we are to hear twice as much as we speak. We're to see twice as much as we speak. And I say that everybody is going to feel better about you. And you're going to be more receptive and received by good people if you keep your mouth shut. And if you say what you ought to say when you ought to say. I had a wonderful experience today. A salesman came, an insurance salesman came to talk to my wife and I. An insurance salesman. And he was just a young fella. And I said, after he had done his talk, and I said, are you a Christian? He said, well, no, but he said, I've been going to a church in Grand Rapids. I said, what kind of a church is it? He said, well, it's called Mars Hill Church. I said, it sounds like to me maybe it's a little charismatic, or it's an undenominational church. Well, he'd only been there once or twice or so. But when we got through with all of our conversation and his sales pitch, I said, his name was Asa, A-S-A. That's a Bible name, and I told him a little bit about Asa in the Bible. Then I said, Asa, would you take a couple minutes, and you've given me your pitch. Let me tell you about Christ. And I told him about Christ. He said his family had never taken him to church. They weren't atheists, they were just not church-going people. He said, I went to this one church a couple times. I said, well, did they ever offer to you the plan of salvation, how you'd get saved? He said, he didn't know what I was talking about. So I said, would you let me take the Bible and show you how you could get saved? And I told my wife tonight, I said, when I gave that man that plan of salvation today, it was the most clearest, most blessed of any time I've ever given the plan of salvation, and I've given it to hundreds. He understood. He was a smart kid, probably about 24 years old, and brilliant. And I haven't done this in a long time. And I said, Asa, would you like to accept Christ as your Savior? He had been to the Passion show. He'd seen that. So I had a little edge because he didn't understand what Christ had done for him. He asked me what I thought about the show, and I said, I can't judge it because I haven't seen it, so I'll just leave it at that. But when I got down, I stuck my hand out like this. I said, Asa, I've told you about the Lord. I went down to the scriptures and showed him all about it, how to accept Christ. I said, here's my hand. Would you reach out and take my hand, and by taking my hand, say, I accept Christ as my Savior. And he thought for a minute, and he thrust his hand into my hand, and he bowed his head, and he asked God to save him. And he couldn't get over it. After he made the profession, he couldn't get over it. He said, you saved my life. You saved. I said, no, I haven't saved your life. God saved your soul.
Amen.
But he was so filled with joy. I gave him a brand new Schofield Bible. And I said, this will be good. He said, I have a Bible. I said, you probably don't have the right one, so I'm going to give you this one right here.
Amen.
And I said, this is a study Bible, and you can follow some of Mr. Schofield's notes. And there's references in there where you can find different things in the Bible. He was so elated. He left here with joy in his heart and soul. He lives in Grand Rapids. And I haven't really figured out a good church to send him to yet over there, but there must be some church over there that I can send him. And I got his address and I'll call him. But it was a joy to me. I preached down in Chesterton at the Fair Havens Church and the Bible College, and Monday, Tuesday, it was Tuesday and Wednesday every Wednesday morning when I preached, there were about 3 college students that got saved. 3 college students. And that one girl was so beautiful. Chapter 18, verse 1. Proverbs. Through desire a man, having separated himself, seeketh and intermeddleth with wisdom. What Solomon is talking about here, that through desire, through personal determination, through a desire to achieve something. Otherwise, to want to go places in this world, a man must seek wisdom and knowledge, and then separate himself from all other pursuits, so he could devote himself to that which he is after in his life, his studies, his career, whatever. I think that it's a lesson for all of us. It's a lesson for our secular life as well as our Christian life, spiritual life. He's saying a man would almost have to become a voluntary recluse, like a hermit, and set his mind on getting this, what he's after, and not letting anything deter him from his desire. It was said in Proverbs 19:22, the desire of a man is his kindness. Otherwise, you are just about what you emphasize. I'm going to say that again. You are just about what you emphasize. You are just about what you want to be. And you can go just as far as you want to go. But you'll show favor to the thing that you're really interested in, for that craving, for that passion, for that drive, that pluck, that desire that's in you to get someplace, to do something, to find a vocation, to find a career, to get your education, get your training, so that you can be all that you can be and should be and need to be in your area that you have expertise in. I don't know if I'm really accurate in what I'm saying, but this is my own personal thoughts. If I was a young man, say like this young man, instead of floundering for years to find out what I was supposed to do, I believe I'd take an aptitude test to see where my strengths were and where my weaknesses were. To find out what I'm apt to do and what I cannot do. So many times people waste a lot of years in trying to be something that they never could be. But God has given to us all abilities, different gifts. And I don't know what yours may be, but through a desire, a man will separate himself. And he'll give himself over to doing nothing else but that. And nothing else really matters. If I was going to be a professional baseball player, when I was a kid, that's what I really wanted to be. When I was just a boy, 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, that's all I had in my head. And I'd take another kid and go down to the ball field, and I wanted to be shortstop, is what I wanted to be. And I'd have him hit me ground balls, and ground balls, and ground balls, so I could scoop them up and throw them. I got really good at it, really I did. Anybody can do anything if you really practice at it. And I got so I was real good. I never did. I made the high school baseball team, but my eyes went bad right at that same time, and I couldn't see the ball to hit it. I was playing when I was about 13, 14 on a sandlot baseball team in Detroit called the 8 Mile Aces, 8 Mile Road. I was batting .500. That's pretty good for a kid. But in my high school, my eyes went bad, and I was afraid to wear my glasses, batting, afraid the guy hit me in the head or hit me in my glasses, put my eyes out. But I'm saying you can, if you want to be a football player or a basketball, or if you want to be a musician, I mean top rate, through desire, through that pluck, that push in your life, you could be an outstanding musician. That is, if you had the talent to begin with, the ability to begin with. A doctor or a lawyer. Perhaps you want riches, or you want, you'd like to have a Stingray vet Chevrolet. That's what you'd really want. That'd be the peak of your career if you could just have a vet. Or perhaps a Jaguar. I'll tell you something. You can just about in America get whatever you want if you wanted it bad enough. You could about get it tomorrow if you wanted to. You would find somebody that would finance the thing. You might have wall-to-wall carpet and back-to-the-wall payments. But you could get what you want in this world, in this country at any way. But if you want to be an airplane pilot, you could be one. If you had ability to do that sort of thing. If you wanted to be a dedicated, God-fearing, Holy Ghost, Spirit-filled preacher of the gospel, you could do that.
Amen.
You could do that. Through desire, a man would separate himself, and nothing else would be important. You would take the plate, turn the plate over, and fast, and ask God, fill me with the power of God. Use me for the glory of God. Lord, I'd rather die if I can't have your power on my life. If you went after it that way, you'd find what you really are after. You can't find too many people that want to make consecration in their life and be dedicated and be all that you could be for God or whatever you want it to be. You can through desire. I like this verse. It's a wonderful verse. If you put your heart into whatever your life career might be,
And whatever you purpose to do, whatever project you are looking for in your days ahead, and you could promote holiness and promote prayer. And I know what has to be done. You have to plant right kind of seeds in here to get a harvest. You don't put it in there, it'll never be there. Would you forgive me? I told my class from year to year, this is not a Sunday school lesson. This is not a preaching message. This is a class where I'm trying to train Christian workers. And if you can't take it, then don't bother to come to the class. I'm not going to be rude or ugly, but I'd like to be able to speak frankly without offending people. Amen. When I talk. Amen. But you are just exactly what you want to be. You are just exactly. You want to be corny and screwball and nincompoop? You can be all of that. If you want to be a halfway, slippy, sloppy, good-for-nothing, fruitless Christian, you can be that. I'm concerned about it. If you want to look right, you look just exactly like you want to look. You will. I see all kinds of screwballs. Just go out to the mall and just sit there and look people go by. Here's a guy who wants to look like a Texan. He's been a cowboy and Indian kid all of his life. He wants to be that. He's got the cowboy boots and the 10-gallon hat and all the rest that goes with it. And he just struts himself like he's from Texas, and he's probably from Bannister or Ovid or St. John's. He ain't got a lick of sense. But he wants to be a Dude Ranch cowboy. So that's the way he looks. Here's a bewhiskered old fella, and he's got the chain around his neck and a flea collar around his hair, and he's just exactly, he's a hippie because he wants to be a hippie. That's what he wants. You could be godly. You could live just like you want to live, but it's through desire. That's what our wisest man that ever lived said. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. I know that I know there are hindrances sometimes. I understand that. There's lack of abilities, and there is lack of opportunities, and sometimes lack of facilities. You can't always just do exactly like you'd want to do. But if you were patient and you'd stay on the path and pay the price, be persuaded through desire. A man having separated himself seeketh and intermeddleth with wisdom. If you'd like to be an Einstein or a college professor or an educated teacher, public school, you can do that if you've got ability. But don't try to be something that you're not. That's why I said at the offset, I'm not sure about my knowing all that I know. But there are aptitude tests. You can take these things, and it wouldn't take long to go through all the questionnaire and have somebody that's trained along that line to say, you know, really what you ought to be as an electrician, what you ought to be as a plumber, what you ought to be as some other sort of occupation. But through desire, you can be what you want to be. We're in the 18th chapter, and we're in the first verse tonight, and I've spent a great deal of time expressing myself concerning through desire a man having separated himself. If you really seek whatever you want to seek, you can achieve whatever you want to achieve if you have the ability to do that. Let me back up to say this. I know there have been a lot of people that come through this institute. Some of them wanted to be preachers. but they couldn't be a preacher. Even if they wanted to be, they couldn't be. First of all, they have a divorce. And you can't pastor a church and be a divorced man. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but not scripturally. You can be a wonderful help in the church, and you could be a wonderful guide and teacher and counselor and helper. But there are rules and regulations in the Bible for regulations for a pastor. So you eliminate yourself there. Then again, too, I'm not saying, it's all I've ever done as pastor, 55 years of it. You don't have to be smart, because you can tell that I'm not altogether that smart. But I, through desire, more than anything in the whole world, I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
Amen.
This has been in my soul since I was 10, 11 years old. All I ever wanted to do was pastor a church. But it's true desire that was inside of me. I did go away to Bible college and graduate from seminary and all of that sort of thing. And I'm glad for that wonderful training. But I'm saying, I known people that went through Bible college and got their degrees, and they couldn't preach their way out of a wet paper sack. Just can't preach. Now, one of the qualifications to be a preacher is to preach. You have to preach, and if you can't preach, you can't preach. I mean, you know what I'm saying. I might get somewhere tonight, I may not, but I remember a story I heard. This boy got called to preach church, and this is down in Kentucky where they think a little different than we do here. And he said, come home and said, Mama, I got called to preach tonight. Oh, she said, son, that's the most wonderful news I ever heard. She said, you know, son, I want you to preach for me right now. Oh, he said, Mama, I can't preach. I just got called. I have never studied. I haven't been to Bible college. I don't know anything about preaching. Son, if you got called to preach, you're going to preach. I said, Mom, I tell you I can't preach. She said, you're going to preach. Now, you understand, you mind your mother, and you preach now. So he said, okay. He said there was this little red hen, and it was out here in the front yard, and it would pick up grubs and worms and bugs, and it would fly up on the pump handle and drink out of the horse trough, and it would jump over and go down into the garden and pick up what it could eat there in the garden. And then there was this red fox that snuck through the grass and pounced upon that little red hen and ate him up. She said, well, go on. And he said, that's it. She said, you really can't preach, can you, son? So he said, I told you couldn't. So he went away to Bible college and he graduated. Well, when he come home, she said, I want you to preach for me, son. He said, well, okay, I'll preach. He said, there was this little red hen.
Yeah.
He was out here in the yard. And he was picking up grubs and worms and bugs. And he'd jump upon the pump handle, get over on the horse tank and drink out of the water there, get out in the garden and pick up what he could there. And then there was this dastardly red fox snuck down through the grass and pounced upon him and ate him up. He said, man, you can preach, can't you, son? Some people can, some people can't. You have to understand, though, that there are limitations. I feel sorry. I feel sorry for some people who struggle and put themselves through, drag their family through this and that and the other thing, trying to be something, preacher or something, and never been able to and couldn't preach. I'm not going to say any more about that, but through desire, a man will separate himself and give himself over. There's no telling what you could do if you would allow yourself to. Verse number 2 said, a fool hath no delight in understanding, but that his heart may discover itself. Now, a fool in the Bible is somebody that's dense, somebody that is necessarily stupid, maybe an impious. When I say an impious, I mean he had no piety, no holiness, no godliness, careless habits in mind and in his body, and perverse perhaps. Said this man has no knowledge, has no delight in knowledge. He doesn't want to get an education. He doesn't care about even going to public grade school and high school rather than even going on to college. Though he's somehow or other he said he might have some understanding. I was thinking about Isaiah 5:12, and the harp and the viol and the tabret and the pipe and the wine are in their feast, but they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hand. Therefore, my people have gone into captivity because they have no knowledge, and their honorable men are famished, and the multitude dried up with thirst. It's a problem. There are people who are stupid, and they want to be stupid, and they stay stupid because they will not accept any knowledge whatsoever. Brother Mark, I'm going to pick on you, but would you turn to Proverbs 3 and 13 through 18? Just read it out loud.
Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. For the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. Length of days is in her hand, and in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are the ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that retaineth her.
You see the importance of knowledge, the importance of having wisdom. It comes through training and through education, whether it be in a school or in academics, in a book, or applying yourself to learn things about the world and about life and about the pursuit of happiness in your life. A fool's sole desire is to show his own stupidity and his emptiness in his life. You've seen a lot of people, have you not? They're just dumb. Just dumb. It really bothers me, and I'm no whiz-bang, and I'm not an intelligent person in the sense that I'm a know-it-all. But it bothers me if I was to ask Brother Armstrong, I'd say, Brother Armstrong, which way is north? He wouldn't have the slightest idea which way was north. It bothers me. You know which way is north, don't you? Yes, you go straight north that way. You come up from Jackson this way, that's going north, right? But you ask some people, they wouldn't know which way is north. They don't know how to. It bothers me that people could live in this world and not know which way was north. Whenever I go into a city, I ask somebody, which way is north? Because you kind of get twisted around, coming around like this, and you say, well, which way? That's north. So does not even appreciate the education. I mean, you could send a lot of people in our church have paid money to send their kids to our Christian school. And those stupid kids would fool around, mess around, fool around, mess around,
Amen.
and never get an education. They just barely get through enough to graduate, and that's all. And their life is nothing. They're going no place, and they'll never get there because they have no background of discipline in their life. It's a, well, and like I say, a fool is a fool. And a fool has no delight in understanding. He only wants to fulfill his own heart's desires. You know, Donna, it costs something to be a bum. It really costs you something to be a jerk. It costs you something to be a drunk. Oh yes, say, oh, it costs you something to be a dope addict. Sure. It costs you something to be a non-Christian. You say, well, I don't know why I would. Well, boy, when I was a kid growing up, my mom was such a wonderful Christian woman, a clean person. And I slept between two clean sheets on my bed. I put a clean shirt on every day. She checked me out at the door to see if my ears were clean. At that time, as a little boy, it didn't mean much to me. But when I got away and went to Bible college and had to take care of my own bedding, my own socks, my own laundry, Mom was a pretty wonderful person at that time. You don't really appreciate what you got, you know. But I thought about it a million times. Why would somebody want to run away from home when you got a sweet mother,
Amen,
who's fixing your breakfast for you and lunch and supper and packing a lunch for you to go to school or to work and keep your clothes clean? But these jerks, they'll go against mom and dad, leave home and be street people and live like pigs, sleep under bridges. Woo! In liberty, we can do whatever we want to do. You're dumb is what you are. Dumb. That's the way people are. I'm trying to say you can be just about what you want to be. And in chapter 3 there in Proverbs, it talks about length of days and riches and honor and pleasantness and peace and the tree of life and happiness and provisions. You pay for that. But it's a lot better to pay for something that's worth something than just to be a jerk and pay to live like a fool. And I think it's pretty dear pay. Don't be a fool. Somebody has well said, whose fool are you? Are you a fool for Christ, or are you a fool for the devil? You could very well be a fool for the devil. Follow that course and you're a dumb, stupid cluck. I don't know, maybe, like I said, this is not a Sunday school class. I can say just about what I want to say. But now, I grant you that some people are slower learners than others. Maybe you